Hey, Jeters. We're back. And today we're going to talk about seeking out failure, having small footsteps every day, and then kind of combining that with choosing discomfort rather than letting life choose it for you. And part of the reason why we're going to talk about this today is there's some exciting stuff that's going on at Merle. And to maybe the unsophisticated eye, or maybe people that are not as seasoned with how things happen in real life, it might feel overwhelming or hard, or it might feel like we are not winning. And my view is it's just another day, and it's all part of the process. And so I was actually just talking with Taylor about how fantastic he's doing handling some of these, I wouldn't even call them setbacks, but these normal steps, these normal iterations through the process. And it got me thinking, I think maybe we should do a short video on this since it's happening in real time and I have some sort of view, I think, on what the future looks like. And again, I could be wrong, but I've done this a few times. And I thought maybe I'd share some concrete examples so people had a very concrete understanding of some of the things I've experienced, and they can see how I've just sort of followed my own advice and how that can open up incredible doors and opportunities. So this episode will principally follow this theme of seeking out failure, not trying to avoid it. And the way I kind of think about this is oftentimes in life, what I find people do is, in many cases, there's like two things that people generally do when they're faced with something very challenging. And it's more than this, but these are sort of the two general cases that I see people take. And I completely understand why people might take these paths, why they might have in their mind that this is what I should do, rather than sort of the way I do these things. The first path is they'll be presented with something hard. This is sort of the universal thing that's going on. They'll be presented with something challenging, and they will try to understand how they can get through this thing, how they can make this thing happen. And so the first type of person will approach this and say, I'm not good enough. I can't ever succeed in this capacity. And so they have already resigned themselves to failure and they don't even try. This, I think, is it's very hard to do things of substance, to have substantial impact, and to achieve, I think, greatness in anything if you already resign yourself to failure. And again, I'm not talking about things like me saying I want to be an astronaut and just saying it casually, or someone saying, Goju, you can never be an astronaut. If I don't want to be an astronaut, then it doesn't matter, right? So I'm talking about the cases where there's something that you desperately want to do, and you are thinking about achieving this thing. And again, my hope is that the thing that you're trying to do, you're inspired the right way. I'm not talking about necessarily getting the pretty girl or the pretty boy, or things that are more materialistic, having the big house. I'm talking about things more that are substantial, like being able to have an incredible career in some domain that you have found that you absolutely love. So for me, that might be programming or artificial intelligence or teaching at a university, something that I've spent some time thinking about, and I have a good understanding of the landscape, and now I want to commit myself to this thing. So the first type of person will look at this and say, I'm just not good enough and I can't do it. And they have resigned themselves to failure. They don't even try. This person, strong claim, will never succeed because they will never try. And because they won't try, it's not possible for them to win. That is the sad state of the universe. So if you're ever in the situation where there's something that you desperately want to do, and you're doing it for all the right reasons, your intentionality is, ethical and really deeply thought through. It's not flaky, or it's not whimsical. It's something quite intentional and that you've deliberated on. Then you can't have this outlook. You cannot, because you'll never achieve it. The second type of person will approach this and say, okay, I'm not good enough yet, so I'm going to think about this. I'm going to think deeply about the things that I need to do, and I'm going to iterate in perpetuity, just thinking. And what I mean by this, about this thinking part, is truly just that. It's just thinking. You're not doing. So you're making a list of all the things that you need, and you're continuing to iterate and refine that list. And that's all you're doing. These people also, I think, will never succeed because they're not taking action toward achieving this thing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't plan and be prepared. Absolutely, you should. What I'm talking about here is you're just thinking. All you're doing is thinking. You're making the list about the things that you need to do, and then you're refining that list in perpetuity. You're not actually starting to execute on those things. And believe it or not, there's some folks that I've worked with and I've met. In fact, some of my students at this place fall into this bucket. There was actually someone that I'm very fond of. I really, really like this person, but they fall victim to this overthinking, and wildly intelligent person, but incapable or not able to move into the action phase. And sadly, in this particular case, it was fear. It wasn't that they didn't think about it long enough. They were thinking about it quite a bit. It's just that they were afraid to take action. And that's totally common. Many people, this is also, I think, for the people that resign themselves to failure and never try, oftentimes this can be fear as well. And a big part of that fear is it's embarrassment. It's that you will try this thing and you won't succeed, and somehow you'll take this in this personal way that shows that it reinforces all the things that you thought you couldn't succeed, you couldn't do it, then you tried and you didn't, and so you're right. You were right, and all your friends were right, and your family was right. Everybody that told you couldn't do it, everybody was right, and you didn't do it. And so you shouldn't try. This is a terrible mindset. Do not fall victim to this. Whatever you do, please don't fall victim to this. Succeeding at things is about action and iteration. It's not about trying once and succeeding. In my life, there's been almost no one that I know, myself included, and I'm going to give you some concrete examples here in a moment, where I tried to do something and I failed, and I tried to do it again and I failed, and I kept failing. But the difference between me and most of the rest of the world is once I make up my mind to do something, I just keep trying until either it happens or I die. That's it. Those are basically the only two outcomes that I have in my head. I will achieve this, or I'm just going to die trying. That's it. There's no other outcome. So let me give you some concrete examples, because this is the third type of person. So one more time very quickly. First type of person, they resign themselves to failure. They don't even try. Second type of person, they think, I could do this, but let me think about all the things that I need to do. And they just iterate and they think about it. They overthink. They're not taking action on the things they're thinking about. They're just planning without action. And then the third type of person is me. I'm thinking about it too, but I'm just going to try. And each time I try, I'm going to learn. I'm going to try, I'm going to learn. And I'll make my lists, but I'm not going to spend forever on those lists because I know that I can get stuck in that process. So here's the first example of this. When I graduated high school, I graduated with my fantastic 2.7 GPA. That's right. 2.7 GPA. I was a solid C student. And in fact, most of my teachers thought that all I was a jock, because I played sports at the time, and that I didn't really have much going on up here. Now, I knew that it was like a different story, and so did my parents, but the teachers, they didn't know me, right? So all they knew is what they saw for my grades, and mostly my grades were awful because I just wasn't trying. So then comes undergrad, and I did high school in Colorado. I'm actually a huge fan of Colorado. I lived there for 30 plus years, I think, before moving to California. Wonderful place. I just got kind of tired of the winters. I still snowboard occasionally, but being in the snow, I feel like my sentence of 30 years was enough. So graduating from high school in Colorado, the two universities that were top of mind for me to apply to were Colorado State University and University of Colorado Boulder. Notice that a school like this is not even on my radar, right? I don't have any kind of delusions that I could ever attend a school like this, much less end up teaching at a school like this. It's interesting how things can change, right? When you persist, when you set yourself a goal that you just are unrelenting on. So I applied to Colorado State University. I applied to University of Colorado Boulder. I get accepted at Colorado State. I'm rejected from CU Boulder. Sort of like not that much of a surprise. So I eventually go to CSU, and I still do, I do well like the first semester because mostly everyone's telling me I'm going to fail. And historically, I don't even fault them for this because I was, I'm a late bloomer. and I wasn't really trying. And so the historical evidence is that I should have failed. But I knew in my heart of hearts I wasn't really trying. And so part of the reason why I did so poorly in high school was that. And so I was going to show people that, like, oh, if I try, I'll do better. So I did try in the first semester, and my GPA was almost a 4.0. I think I got like a couple A minuses. I think I took Japanese that semester, and that was actually pretty hard. And I was having to learn how to work. So this was a new thing for me. I had maybe the neurons, I had the ability to think, but I didn't really understand hard work at this point. And this is actually something that's really important and often overlooked, is being the smartest person in the world, but not having a strong work ethic is not going to take you very far. I don't care what your IQ is and how fast you can solve problems. If you can't put in the work, it just is not going to matter. Not in the long term. The people with less IQ but much more discipline, they're going to eclipse you. And I know countless people that are significantly smarter than me that just have not developed the work ethic that I have and have not been able to achieve all the things that they've wanted to achieve, not because they don't have the gifts. They have the gifts. They just have not built up the accomplishments. So anyway, I do my undergrad at Colorado State University and eventually get through computer science there with still sort of abysmal GPA, 3.1. So now I'm like a solid B student. And a big reason why my GPA was not better is, again, I was screwing around. The first semester that I was there and I was focused, my GPA was like a 3.9, and I took really hard classes, so it wasn't easy. In fact, my advisor was telling me, don't take all these hard classes. You don't take intro to programming, intro to algorithms, Japanese, and blah, blah, blah. Not all at once, not as a first semester. And I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. And I did it, and everybody was like, wow, we were wrong. Yet they were right, because my GPA from that point on just plummeted. So needless to say, I get through the undergraduate curriculum with a 3.1 GPA. And now we fast forward where I'm in industry and I'm actually working. I'm building Nautica and I'm learning discipline. I'm learning what it takes to work hard. And in my mind, I'm still thinking that I wonder if I could get into Boulder, CU Boulder. Now, in Colorado, University of Colorado Boulder, it tends to be considered a really good school, maybe the best school. I don't want to start any fights or anything, but it's like a top 30 program for computer science. It maybe isn't at the level of where I teach now, but it's, for being in Colorado, it's quite good. So I'm in industry. I had created Nautica at this point. I'm a very different person. Almost a decade has passed. Let's say like 7 years have passed since my undergrad. And I think I took an online course at Boulder and did very well in it, mostly, again, because I tried. And I really understand what it means now to work. And so I took, I think, a computer architecture course, and I got an A in that. I think maybe I took like a compiler's course, and I got an A in that as well. So I applied to CU Boulder again, now for the master's program. And again, I'm rejected. Twice now. Undergrad, CU Boulder rejects me. Grad school, CU Boulder rejects me. But what do? I don't quit. I don't give up. I talk to people, and one of the professors that taught the course, or the courses that I was taking, said, look, I think that you actually should do very well, but your undergraduate GPA is like way below what is generally accepted to get into grad school. It's usually like a 3.8 and you have a 3.1. It's like hard for them to consider that. So take the GRE and do incredibly well in the GRE and then reapply. Sounds easy. Not very easy, very hard in practice. And also with the GRE, one of the things that the way this works, at least at the time, is they essentially average your scores. So you can't just use the latest and greatest score. You have to essentially do exceptionally well. And you want to do exceptionally well right out of the gate. And I knew this going in. People advised me. So what I did is I realized, again, Boulder is where I wanted to do my grad school, largely because I was in Colorado at the time. I was married, and my wife really wanted to be in Colorado. My job was there, and so going outside of Colorado was not, I didn't really consider that as an option. Maybe today I would think about it like in a different capacity. Whatever the case, I had my heart set on Boulder. Again, talking about making the decision, being like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be dead set on this thing. So I spent the next 6 months studying for the GRE. I became obsessed. I did everything I could, almost all free time. I would learn the vocabulary. I would do the practice tests. I would time myself. I did this over and over and over, literally for 6 months, all free time that I had. I was working my full-time job. I was still running Nautica, but I made sacrifices. I sacrificed everything else so I could do very well. And eventually, after I thought I was ready and the deadline for applications was approaching, I took the GRE. And it was even a little bit harder. I'm not trying to make myself the victim here, but I had taught myself how to type in Dvorak at that point. So like, again, I think all of you or many of you have seen my keyboard, right? Is like, this is what Dvorak. Well, the Kinesis is actually making this even stranger. You can see that they've moved the tab, escape, and stuff, and the caps lock is moved. It's actually a really good layout the way they've done it. But so you can see this is not QWERTY, and I don't need the letters and stuff to be printed. I touch type, but I knew that at the time, the rest of the world hadn't sort of caught on to Dvorak. And so they would be administering the exam using a QWERTY keyboard. So I had to relearn QWERTY so I could type specifically for like the essay portion. And so I did that too. And I didn't do that super well, by the way. I did that. I was trying to get someone at the admission process to let me change the keyboard to Dvorak, and they're like, "No, that sounds real fishy. I don't, we don't do this thing." It's like, okay, they don't understand. And again, I don't have any power, right? I'm trying to get into grad school here. I'm not. Yeah. I'm just a lowly entry-level grad student, basically. So I take the exam, and I did fairly well. It worked out. All of that work, and again, this was not, I didn't just say, oh, I'm going to go take the GRE, and I showed up one weekend. I studied relentlessly for 6 months. In 6 months, I bought the books, I bought the test exams, I married myself to this goal. And I knew, in some sense, what my scores were for the practice exams before I ever took the real exam. And so I had a sort of a ballpark approximation of where I would be in terms of the scores before I even took the exam. Just a minor anecdote as an aside is, for Boulder, the part that they cared about the most was like the mathematics and the analytical. I think they didn't care that much about the vocabulary, which is good because the vocabulary part I actually scored the worst on. Which in some ways is wildly ironic because then most of my grad school experience, especially for my doctorate, was filling the gaps in my vocabulary and working on becoming a better writer, because that was clearly my weakest point, which my advisors were able to quickly assess. In other words, don't take shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. That you think you're taking shortcuts, you're not. You're just shortcutting yourself. And I didn't fully understand this at this point. I understand this much better now. So the anecdote is, I knew the way the exams were set up, especially for the math, in that as you got further in the test, it would be assessing how well you're doing or how poorly you're doing, and it would make the questions easier or harder based on how well you did. And one of the questions was this, toward the end of the math section. Now, I'm a computer scientist, right? And I look at this question, and I'm fairly certain I failed the exam now, because this question is so simple in my mind. I can't imagine that this is like question 47 out of 50. And I'm like, wow, how did I bomb this exam? By the way, this is just asking the absolute value of this. So it's just whatever the positive value of this number. It's so simple. It's just 5, right? It's not even a trick question. And so I was certain at this point. I was like, okay, I've totally failed the math. And turns out, I think I was like maybe one question away from like a perfect score. And this was a hard question, I guess. It kind of makes sense in hindsight now that I think about it, is that for people that are not computer science, this might be a very strange symbol. And so that's probably why it was considered hard. But for me, being computer science, like in discrete mathematics, we see the absolute stuff all the time. And so anyway, it was kind of amusing because after I finished the exam, they're able to tell you your math score and your vocab score immediately, because it's just like A through E or something. And they asked me, do you want to know how you did on those 2 sections? And I was like, oh no. Yeah, okay. I want to know. So she wrote it down on this little sticky thing, and I couldn't look at it at the time. I was like, you just close it. And I remember I walked back to the car and I sat there for a few minutes, and I was like, deep breaths. And then I was like, I opened it, and I think I noticed the vocab score first, which was terrible. And I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, I thought maybe it'd be better than that, but whatever. And then I saw the math score, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, holy cow, I may actually have a chance now to do this. So, and then the analytical score came in later, and that was actually even better. And so then I reapplied to Boulder for the 3rd time, and I got in. The story's not done yet. So then that was just for the master's program. But I had plans. I have delusions of grandeur, as I think all of you know. And my plan was doing my PhD there. So I made it known from day one that I want to do my doctorate. And they're like, okay, well, for your doctorate, first you have to get through the master's program, and you should do a master's thesis so everybody can see that you can do research. You need to maintain at least a 3.85 GPA. That's the minimum. And basically that afforded me the opportunity to, I think, maybe get a couple A minuses, something like that, in order to do the PhD. And I think that's actually what happened, is I think I got 2 A minuses, something like that. A minus in, numerical analysis, A minus in algorithms. I deserved the A minus in numerical analysis. probably didn't deserve the A minus in algorithms, but hey, did it matter? No, because I got into the PhD program. But then in the PhD program, one of the first things that you have to do is the prelim exam. They call it the qualifiers. And at Boulder, the qualifying exam it's like a 5-hour exam that's proctored. So you have to go to Boulder, and this is how it used to be. I don't know how it is now. This is back in 2007 or 6 or something. You go into this room with all the other PhD entry-level students. So these are people that have already been accepted to the PhD program, but they're not PhD candidates yet. Because I think until you pass, I think you have to pass the prelim, and you have to have approval for your doctoral dissertation. Not you don't have to do the defense, but you have to have approval for the proposal or something, and then you're officially like a PhD candidate, something like that. So I'm taking this exam with, I think it was 3 other students, because it's a small group, right? It's pretty selective. And again, it's like a 5-hour exam over something like 12 courses. Again, this is also, I'm studying my life away for this one. Probably studied over the course of an entire year. And I think I still remember some of the things, but not all of them. So I take this exam, and I feel as though I did sort of well-ish, but could have done better. And it was hard. It was not easy. Well, it turns out that the committee, the PhD admissions committee, basically the professors and the senior faculty in computer science, or computer engineering, I guess it was computer engineering, they had decided that they only wanted half the students to pass, and they wanted the other half to fail, regardless of the scores. Didn't matter how well or poorly you performed, only 2 students would pass, and the other 2 would fail. Well, I was in the group that didn't pass. That I think, if this is what was told to us was true, that all of us scored something like in the 90th percentile or above. But because it's basically bell curve or whatever this is called, it didn't matter. Like, we could all have scored in the 98th percentile and above, and they'd still cut you off and say these 2. So I was, I guess, the 3rd best of the group, and it didn't matter that I got like a 93% on the exam. Not good enough, and you fail. So now I have failed. What is this? How many times is this? I've lost count, right? This is the 3rd or 4th time that Boulder has rejected me and failed me. Okay. And by the way, the PhD entrance exam, it's sudden death, which basically means you can only fail once. If you fail it again, you're kicked out of the program. So I can't fail it when I take it again. I must pass this time. You want to talk about pressure, right? Especially because my goal is PhD the whole time. And most of the world doesn't know that it's like sudden death. I do, though. And that was one of the more intense things, I think, in my life, dealing with that pressure. And truthfully, I think that it's quite good, because it taught me, I think, how to learn how to deal with an incredible amount of pressure that is really out of your control, in that just worrying about this every day until the exam is not going to be helpful. I mean, do what you can do to prepare yourself for something, but spending all this time being anxious it's not really helping you unless you're using that energy to make yourself better. And that's really what I was doing. So needless to say, I then take the exam the second time, and this time I pass. Whew, right? Okay. And then I think all of you know about the Best Dissertation Award and how I suffer even another failure. This time, it wasn't necessarily my fault, but I'm still in the category of these failures. So what's the point in all this? The point in all this is that it's very easy, I think, to look at anyone's life and say, oh, look at you and all the things that you've done and how easy it's been for you. And you've been gifted all of these things, and the rest of us, we have to work for it. And it's just always been so easy, right? That, it's much harder for me. My path through this program was not easy at all. But the truth is that those obstacles were incredible. They were wonderful opportunities that taught me how to be better, how to deal with what I don't really consider as a failure, but rather temporary setbacks and opportunities to learn, figure out where I'm weak, grow in those areas, and then become better. And that's been, in my mind, one of the recurring themes of my life, which brings me to where we are right now with stuff that's going on with Merle, is that there's something that's happening. And truthfully, it's nothing. This is part of the reason why I'm so unaffected by this, is when you live through some of the stuff that I had to deal with in the past. Like, I'll be honest, being rejected from Boulder 5 times or whatever doesn't faze me at all. And by the way, I think too, when you're rejected by a place like Boulder, it's really easy to just make them the enemy and be like, oh, these guys, they rejected me. They don't understand how awesome. Truth is, I wasn't ready. I hadn't done all the things that I needed to do. I think Boulder was within their right, with the exception of the PhD exam. That one might have been a little pushing it, but whatever. It is the PhD, so, it should be hard. And honestly, as I think about it now, I think part of that was they were just trying to test the resilience of the PhD students. I think that what they're trying to see is, if they experience failure, what do? Are they going to quit? And I think a lot of people do quit. And as we've discussed, PhD really is about failing. You write those research papers, and if you can't deal with failure, you're not in the right place, because you're going to be getting those failures all the time. And a lot of people that are in PhD programs, they really haven't failed, at least not to the degree that I had up until that point. A lot of times it's the students that are straight A students, valedictorian, this type of thing. And that's the way school is set up until the PhD program. And then now suddenly it's about failing. Writing a research paper, rejected. Taking, trying to make a dissertation proposal, it not being sufficient. Being required to know 10 different disciplines in your field, and you don't. You only know 5, right? Like, dealing with those amounts of failures and this adversity in a daily cadence can be extremely overwhelming for most people. And this is why I think the attrition rates for PhD programs are as high as they are. It's like 50% of, at least at the time when I was looking at it, like 50% of PhD students drop out because it's just overwhelmingly hard in terms of the failure that you have to experience. So needless to say, when my background is this, and this is only one part, like, my life is riddled with things that I think most people would consider as failure. I don't even really think about it like this. I think of it like this. They're small footsteps every day. And every time I experience a failure, I just look at it and ask myself, what could I have done better? I don't look at it like, oh, forget them. They don't understand how amazing I am and all this stuff. I did maybe when I was younger. And then I realized there's a huge opportunity here for me to learn and listen to the feedback that they may be giving, or the things that I am aware of that I'm weak on, and then work on improving those. I don't see them as my failures are me. I think of them as these are assessments of where I was then. I'm not there anymore. Time has already moved forward. Your failures are not you. They are an outcome of actions that you took at a particular time that is, by definition, the past. Meaning, if you are growing every day and you're doing this, the person that failed yesterday is not the person that you are today. You already have grown past that person, and maybe that's all that's needed to move you forward and not fail again. So try, and then keep trying. And so with that said, I want to share this Instagram that I think captures, in some sense, the essence of how I feel about this. There's many actual Instas that I get. Maybe I'll drop a couple links in the summary. But this one I quite like, in that I think it captures a high level of how I view these types of things, including the thing that's going on right now with Merle, that I think some of the team might be viewing as like, oh my gosh, like we failed, this is not working. Whereas I think Taylor and I view it as, we're actually making forward progress. We're getting closer and closer. We're almost there. There's just only like a couple things that are remaining. It's like, from our view, from I think the pessimist view, it's that, we failed again and we're not going to get through this. From Taylor and my view, it's like, we're 97% of the way there now. There's just 3% now that we need to fix, and then we'll clear this hurdle. And honestly, if there's one thing that you take away from this episode, this is like really important to me. It's understanding that in order to sort of succeed in your dreams, it has more to do with your mindset, your unrelenting mindset of going after something and not letting yourself be distracted by these little things, like people telling you you aren't ready or you're not good enough or these types of things. And truthfully, they might be right. Maybe you weren't ready last year. Maybe you weren't ready last week. Maybe you weren't ready yesterday. Maybe you are today. And so you keep trying because you're growing every single day. These little things that we get distracted by, they're not a tattoo that is on your forehead that says you're a loser and you're a failure, and it's something that persists. It's just a stamp of something that was someone else's assessment of you at a point in time that you've already moved beyond. So try to keep that in mind. It's the mindset. It's the unrelenting, unwavering mindset that I think will get you through and get you to be able to achieve whatever you set your heart to. You're going to have to work for it. It's not going to be like mom and dad were saying you can do whatever you want. You're going to have to do this, and you're going to have to work really, really, really hard, maybe harder than you've ever worked. Don't expect this stuff to come overnight. It took me a decade before these guys would take me seriously and give me the opportunity to teach at this place. I just don't quit, like you just saw examples of. That's maybe the only difference. Is even one of our biggest funders for Merle, they often will joke and say, yeah, the first time that Goju approached us, we just like handedly turned them down. And they did. And then I just came back and then came back and said, yeah, I really like you guys. What about you? Do you think we're ready now? And then eventually I think they were very much like these guys and said, look, this guy's just not going to stop. And he is making progress. Like, I love his persistence and the fact that he's so set on this. Like, we should probably just concede because he's not going to. And I think that's one of the super hacks in life, is be the person that can accept all of these failures consistently, and it doesn't change your view of yourself. You know that you can be amazing. You know that you can do these incredible things, but it will take work. And the failures that you're experiencing, these are the greatest gifts of opportunities to learn about the things that you may not yet be qualified in, that you can then train yourself to become qualified in, and then they no longer become failures. So let's watch our short Insta. I'm going to have to pause this, or I'm to mute this guy. Here we go.
Are you coming to the street? I strong up a man. I say you want to break. Are you?
Okay. My machine says that it was playing audio. I didn't hear anything, but it says it was recording it, so maybe it did. But I want to just stare at this quote for a moment, because I think that this captures at the heart of this, is basically capturing the message in its purest form, perhaps. People will ask me this all the time: how do you handle failure so well? And this is often my response. Something to this effect is, I'm not outcome oriented. I'm journey oriented. And I don't know how many paths I'll have to take to get to that outcome. Yes, in my mind, I've got the outcome of what I want ultimately, but I don't expect that it's going to happen on the first try, especially for things that are extremely hard. I think to do that is pretty naive, and it can be pretty careless. That this is like an ego thing, is this notion that you're trying to do something that's extremely hard that most people in the world can't do, yet you can just show up and on your first try you can do it. Like, I don't think so. I think that it's going to take some work. And if you go, again, as I was mentioning, it's more about the mindset than it is about who you are. Because who you are today, if you continue to grow, is not who you will be tomorrow, or a week from now, or a month, or a year. You're going to continue to get better. And so it's the mindset. It's the mindset that you have that I'm going to continue to grow. And any weaknesses, any shortcomings that I have today, I'm going to overcome those by just work. And so pretty much all the situations that we get into in life, the way I view them is, I'm going to try to do something. I actually expect that I'll fail. In fact, I think I was writing some code a little while back, and I went to compile it, and it compiled without any errors. And I said, that's strange. Like, is this actually on? I fully expected that this thing would just not work. And that's truthfully how I feel. I've written enough code to expect that I will not get this right on the first try. And when I do, it's not like an ego thing, like, oh, wow, I'm so amazing. It's more like, is the compiler not turned on? Like, is this code if zeroed out? It's more along those lines of expecting that something is strange with the environment. I'm going in expecting that this is going to be a battle. Very much like this clip is that I think this gets at the heart of the fact that, what is this quote from Pequard? You can do everything right and still fail. The measure of a person can be taken by how they handle defeat. Yes. And again, going back to that CU Boulder thing, this is a true story. Rejection. I don't hold a grudge against Boulder. I am super happy that I did my master's and my doctorate from Boulder. It's broadcast all over the place. Like even on the YouTube channel, it says, that's where I did my PhD. There's no animosity that I harbor toward any of the people or any of the things that have rejected me in the past. In many cases, I view them as blessings for people that have helped me realize the weaknesses that I've had and what I can do to make myself better. And that actually goes back to this idea of being kind. Being kind, I think, oftentimes is when you're in a position of power and you can see things that people have as weaknesses to potentially help them become better. Kindness, I think, oftentimes is sharing them some of these hard truths, not to hurt them, but to help them. So with that, I feel like we've sort of hit the mark on what I wanted to try to express about seeking out failures. And hopefully this makes more sense that when I was applying to Boulder, when I was trying to do these things, I think in the back of my mind, I knew to some degree that I might fail. And I tried anyway, because I wanted to see how would I fail? What are the things that I need to improve on? And then I wear those failures as battle scars. Like, I'm glad I went through those, because I do think that if I would have tried just one time, very much like what's going on with Merle, that we've got this very challenging thing in front of us. If we would try just once and get all the victories and all the success in the world, would we learn anything? Would that make us better? Or would that make us maybe just overloaded with arrogance or unsubstantiated confidence that we're better than maybe we think we're better than we really are? And so these setbacks in life, these things where we're not necessarily getting the outcome that we want, I really do think these can be some of the greatest gifts ever. And I think in the world today, there's a lot of confusion on how to interpret these things. And my hope is that at least on GTT, will help people understand that failures are not something to be ashamed of. They're something to be proud of. They're something that show your persistence when you're eventually able to overcome them. Very much like my story and my path with CU Boulder. And the story that I have here. I'll share the story for this university at some point. And I think you'll be very surprised about how that all came together. It's on a sort of a similar type of environment or odyssey as the CU Boulder one. So that's all I got for today. Thanks, everybody. This has been super great. my hope is this reached at least one person, and it's going to help you in some way to not look at those failures as a reflection of you, but rather as feedback that you can learn from, and you can try again, and you can become better and eventually achieve those dreams.